My name is Nick Salch. I'm with the Fabric Customer Advisory Team, specializing in data integration.
Hey everybody, I'm Mark. I'm a product manager on the Data Factory team. Good to see you all today.
So, if you're an Azure Data Factory customer, you've probably seen the announcements about Fabric Data Factory and wonder what it means for the pipelines that you already have. So, first thing, ADF isn't going anywhere. It's fully supported, and the work that you've built there is safe. But there's a lot of new functionality that you can only get in Fabric Data Factory. So, copy jobs, mirroring, Copilot, everything tied into OneLake. And the question that we get most is, what does it actually look like to get from ADF to FDF? So, Mark, I wanted to walk through that with you. So, before we touch anything, can you show us what a typical ADF pipeline looks like today versus what that same thing might look like in Fabric Data Factory?
Yep, yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that, Nick. So let's start by taking a look at what you have today in Azure Data Factory. So on my screen, I have an ADF open, a Data Factory with, let me go over onto the left-hand side on the factory resources. I have lots of pipelines. I have data sets, data flows, and on my screen, I have a pipeline. And I'm going to say, okay, got it. Now, let's take a look at what that looks like when you're coming over into Fabric. So I'm going to go over to my Fabric workspace. I have a pipeline already open over here. Now, what I'm showing you is the newer orientation of the nodes within a pipeline in Data Factory and Fabric today. You can always disable that and go back to the same view that you're comfortable with today. And then what we're going to talk about today is how to get from that first view in ADF to get to the same view inside of Fabric.
Right. So, let's jump into what it takes to get from that ADF view over to that Fabric version. Where do you start?
All right, so let's go back to ADF. So here you are working in your Azure Data Factory today, and you'll see a button on the top right-hand side that says Migrate to Fabric. This is something that we've had there for a little while now, and this is something that you can click and run an assessment and then do the full migration for you without any cost, and it's very fast. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by clicking the Migrate to Fabric button here so I can migrate from my ADF over to my Fabric. Now, the first thing you're going to see is your assessment, and this is going to run through going through all of the items that you have inside of your Data Factory inside of Azure ADF today. So you can see that I have 41 of my 47 pipelines are ready to go. There are 6 that have unsupported things inside of those. You can open those up and you can take a look at what those are. And you can see it doesn't, in this case, it doesn't support the wrangling data flow, which is the Power Query style data flows. And inside of ADF, those really essentially just become the data flows Gen 2 inside of Fabric, so those can be brought over very easily anyway. So this is good, so I'm happy with that. I'm going to click next. So after the assessment runs, now what you're going to do is tell ADF where you want those ADF pipelines to go inside of your Fabric workspace. So I'm going to choose a bug bash workspace that I have, and I'm going to click continue in Fabric. Now, what that's going to do is actually it's going to give you a view into that ADF directly from your Fabric workspace. Essentially, we call this mounting is the term that we use inside of Fabric. And now you'll see the exact same view of that Data Factory from Azure Data Factory inside of Fabric. So now I have my ADF available to me inside of Fabric, and all I gotta do now is click this button up here. And what it's gonna do is it's gonna take all that content that I already reviewed inside of ADF, and it's going to make those into native Fabric pipelines. Now, the first thing I want you to do is to look at your connections. The connections is the part that takes your link services in ADF and turns those into connections inside of Fabric. Because inside of ADF, these are called link services. Inside of Fabric, they're called connections. Now you can go through and you can pick these. We also try to auto-create these, so some of these were auto-created as well. I'm not going to go through all these. I'll just click confirm on it. You'll want to make sure that you have your connections fully mapped when you perform this migration on your ADF. And now the migration is going to be running, and so this will complete in a few minutes. The first thing it's going to do, what you see on my screen, this is taking the global parameters from ADF and turning those into variable libraries inside of Fabric. So essentially what we're doing for you here is all the mapping of terms and capabilities that are in ADF and are there in Fabric, but have different names, and they have different different sort of containers, if you will, inside of Fabric. We do all that translation for you. So everything is being built. Okay, so all of my pipelines now have become native Fabric pipelines, and that took a few minutes and just a single button click, and there's no cost associated with this. The triggers on these pipelines are not running. That's up to you to test these and then enable that.
So now you're natively in Fabric with this upgraded pipeline. What can you actually do now in Fabric Data Factory that you couldn't do before?
Right. So now that you have your pipelines open here inside of and available to you inside of Fabric, and all I had to do is click that button to take all that logic that I've built and make those into Fabric. I can work with these inside of Fabric. I can enable the triggers and the schedules, and I can add all of the additional functionality that Fabric brings to you. So I'm going to open up one of the ones that was migrated over here from that migration. This one is called Metadata Pipeline. Now, one of the really interesting things I'm going to show you is that we actually took the mapping data flow from that original ADF that I was showing you, and now that is available to you as a Dataflow Gen 2, as is inside of Fabric. So now you can run your data flows that we're running on Spark inside of ADF. You can run those inside of Fabric as a Dataflow Gen 2. That's really cool. In addition to that, now that these have landed inside of my Bug Bash workspace, I can add any capability that Fabric brings to me. I'm going to actually go over to this workspace over here, because what I want to show you is you can then add any of the items inside of Fabric into now your existing capabilities that you brought over from ADF, including your pipelines. And some of the really interesting things that you're going to want to look at when you are inside of Fabric now with your ADF pipelines is mirroring. Mirroring is going to be a way to easily take your source data and replicate that in an automatic fashion into Lakehouse. And we see all the different kinds of mirrorings that we provide for you. And that is essentially a very low-cost way to get your data into the Lakehouse. So you could take a look at some of your pipelines that are maybe running copy activities today, and you can convert those into mirroring. Now, if I go back to that, one of the pipelines that was migrated over, in addition to what I have here and running inside of my Fabric now, I can now add additional activities that aren't available to me in ADF. And you can see on the screen, I have a DBT job, so I can orchestrate my DBTs from my pipeline. And a really cool thing that this was asked for a lot in ADF that we were never able to bring, but is now there in Fabric pipelines, is the ability to send emails directly from my pipeline. You can send an email. You can send a Teams message. So I'll add an email to my pipeline that was migrated over from ADF. And then after that, what I'll do is I will add one more activity. Let me just set something that you use a lot inside of ADF, which is a set variable. So you can see that all the same things are also here inside of Fabric. But what's additionally added to you as value inside of Fabric is when you set variables inside of ADF. You know, let's say that you are building, I'll use this meta check variable that I have. And let's say that you're building the expression for this set variable. Well, now we bring the power of Copilot into Data Factory. So this is something that you can't have inside of ADF, but we can give you inside of Fabric. So you migrate your pipelines over, and now you can start to use Copilot. So I can do something like give me a date function that adds 2 days. So you can use natural language to provide the expressions, the pipeline expressions that you in the past either had to memorize or would look up and have to Bing or Google. And now this is all built in through natural language through Copilot inside of your pipelines. All right, so actually there's one more thing I want to show you, which is really super important. I talked about mirroring as a very low-cost way to convert, to move your copy activities from your pipelines. Another really interesting thing to look at is the copy job. So we have a new activity type that's only available inside of Fabric, and that is known as a copy job. So when I add this in here, it's going to look a lot like the copy activity. In fact, what I'll do is I'll attach that to my set variable that I just worked on. But when I click new over here on the copy job, you see I don't have all of the complexities of a copy activity that I need to configure. Instead, I'm going to click new, create a copy job, and this will just ask me for a source, a destination, the field mappings, and then do I want this to be incremental? So we've built in that CDC and incremental capabilities from ADF come into this brand new copy job. And this copy job can now be managed at the workspace level. So even outside of the pipeline, you can now manage your copy jobs and your copy capabilities or data movement outside of the pipeline. So the copy job is super easy and simple to configure, and I would recommend looking at that on your existing ADF pipelines that you've migrated over.
Very cool. So the takeaways are ADF is still fully supported, but going to Fabric Data Factory, your existing work comes with you. And the assessment gives you a clear-eyed view of what migrates cleanly and then performs that migration for you. You can do it on your own timeline, pipeline by pipeline, domain by domain. And the reason to make this move is everything that opens up on the other side. So you have copy jobs and mirroring and Copilot and OneLake, everything that Mark just showed. And it gives Power BI and AI agents the same data that your pipelines just produced in Fabric Data Factory. So thank you for listening. This has been migrating your ADF pipelines over to Fabric Data Factory and all the cool stuff you get.